In this video, we'll discuss how you can add a button list to a control bar. So you can see we have a simple UX component here, and in the panel header we have a control bar, and then in the panel footer we have a control bar, and the control bar in the panel footer is displaying 3 buttons that are part of a button list, and the buttons allow you to select the active panel card in the panel navigator. So you can see that as I tap on different buttons, the active panel changes. So this particular design pattern is very common in mobile applications, where you have a list of buttons that are spread out across either the bottom or the top of the screen, and the buttons are designed to fill the screen. So if I switch my orientation, you can see that the buttons still fill the screen, and the active button in this case is shown with an underline underneath it, but that's just done based on the style sheet. So you could obviously change the style sheet if you didn't want that underline to show there. So let's go now and take a look at the UX Builder to see how this control bar was defined. Also, I would also like to just point out that the top control bar is displaying the name of the active panel. So you can see there it says Home, Charts, and then Settings. So let's go back now to Design Mode and take a look at how this was set up. So you can see that we have a panel navigator that has been set to programmatic mode, and then we have a panel header and a panel footer, and in the panel header we have a control bar, and also in the panel footer we have a control bar. So let's go now to the panel footer's control bar and open up the builder, and we can see that this particular control bar layout has a single layout. It has a single line, and on that line in the middle we have button list 1. So let's go look at our items. So we can see there's button list number 1. It's been defined as a button list type, so when we added the item we chose button list, and then you can see that we've also specified that the buttons should be displayed using the image only option. So all of the different button options are displayed there. These are the standard button options that you get for any button, so we've chosen image only, and then we've gone to the actual button list settings to define the various buttons that will comprise this button list. So we'll open up the builder, and we can see that when we go into the builder we can define as many buttons as we want in the button list. So let's just double click on one of these to see how it was defined. So this is the HTML that would be displayed, but in this case the button is image only, so the HTML is not actually going to be shown. This is the icon that is going to be shown for this button, and then this is the value that will be assigned to the appropriate variable in the control bar's data. So when the first button is pressed, the variable will have a value of Home. When the second button is pressed, the variable will have a value of Charts, and when the third button is pressed, the variable will have a value of Settings. Now the variable is going to be stored in the control bar's data, and you can specify what the variable name is. So we've chosen here button list panel selector, and then within button list panel selector there are going to be 2 sub-properties, one called value, which indicates which button in the button list has been pressed, or if the button list was defined to allow multiple selections, then which buttons are pressed, and then data. This is the property that defines the actual layout of the button bar. So now we can basically go and look at the corresponding action that is fired when a button is pressed here. So we'll see here that this button list has an action called set panel. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video, where we look at how the set panel action was defined. So we're continuing now looking at how a button list is added to a control bar, and we can see that when the when any button in the button list is clicked, the click action is going to fire, and the click action executes the set panel action. So let's go now to the actions definition here, and we can see here is set panel, and you can see that basically what the code does here is, first of all, it looks at the value of button list pane selector dot value 0. So let's go back and look at how this code here was defined. So first of all, when we go back to items and we go back to this button list, we can see that the root variable is called button list panel selector, and that the value variable is called value. So this means that when a button is clicked, the data is going to be updated, and the value that the data property that is going to be updated is button list selector dot value. But since a button list can be multi-select, the value property is actually an array. In this case, since we don't have multi-select turned on, this array is always going to have only a single entry in it, and so we need to just read the first entry in the array, which is value 0. So this is going to basically give us the value that the variable has. Now the value is defined over here in the control bar. When we define the control bar, when we go over here to items and we go to the builder here, we can see that we defined what the value is. So the value here is home. So when the first button is pressed, the value of that variable will be home. So now let's go back to the action. So this target value here is going to be equal to either home or settings or chart. But the actual panels themselves, if we look in the builder here, we can see that the panels themselves are called panel card home, panel card charts, or panel card settings. So we take the name here, target, we get the uppercase version of it, and then we prefix it with panel card underbar, and then we just call the standard panel card set active method, and we set the active panel to whatever value panel name is. So that's all the code that was needed in order to select the active panel when the user taps on a button in the button list over here. So basically there's the button list. Now the button list, as I mentioned, in this particular pattern is set to always fill the complete width of the screen. So if we go back to the builder right now and go to items and go to the button list, you can see that there's a property here called fill width, and we've set that property to true. So that's causing the button list to completely fill the width of the screen. So if we were to turn that property off and then run the component again, we would see that the button lists are basically the standard button size, and they're centered on the screen because we put this in the middle part of the control bar layout. So let's go now back and turn on the fill width property, and that is going to cause it to fill the width of the screen. Now recall also that I said that a button list does allow multi-selection, but you can see here that we've got multi-selection turned off. So that's why we only need to read the value of the value 0 in the array, because there will only ever be one entry in that array. But a button list can be set for multiple selections, and in which case the value property will be an array of all of the selected values. So another thing that I'd like to point out is that when we select the active panel, the heading in the top control bar is also updated. So let's pause now and take a look at how this control bar was designed to automatically show the name of the active panel. So we'll pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing with our discussion about how button lists are added to a control bar, and we're discussing now how the label in this top control bar is updated automatically when the button list changes the active panel. So we'll go back to design mode and go to the builder for the control bar in the top window, open up the properties here, and we can see that this particular control bar just has a single layout with some HTML in the center. Now this HTML over here has been defined to display the value of a data property called panel name. And let's go now and take a look at the data property called panel name, and you can see that panel name has been set to update automatically based on a watch event, And then inside the watch code here, we're using this variable called dialog.activePanelName. So if we click the insert field here, we'll see that there are a whole bunch of system variables that are useful to us, and dialog.activePanelName is one of the system variables that we can use in our watch event. So we're going to use the active panel name. Now the active panel name is going to basically be panel card underbar charts or panel card underbar settings, etc. So we want to remove the panel card underbar prefix that each name has. So we use the JavaScript split method to split the name on a underbar, and that turns name into an array with two entries in it. The first entry is going to be panel card, and the second entry is going to be whatever comes after the underbar. So we want the second entry, and since arrays are zero based, we basically use name of 1, and that gives us the name that we'd like to display, and then we just return that name. So this is basically how the label in the top control bar is automatically updated when the active panel changes. So what we've shown in this video is how a button list can be added to a control bar. A button list is a series of buttons that can be defined to either allow a single button to be depressed or selected, or multiple buttons to be selected. We've also shown how the common pattern of using a button list to select the active panel in a mobile app is created by setting the fill property to have the button list fill the entire width of the screen. And then we showed how the event handler was defined to set the active panel. Thanks very much for watching.